go. Here we 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 go.
And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Containers from the Couch. It's our first one for the year 2023. Hope you all had a good year, good holidays, and we're back with a lot of nice action. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about App Runner and its new integration, which we just released. I think it was last week. Is that correct?
Yep.
Pretty much so. Yep. So my name is Mesh, but I'm first going to introduce my two co-speakers here. Nilesh, would you please introduce yourself? And then afterwards, Hari, if you would also please let us know who you are.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. This is Nilesh. I'm product manager for App Runner. Looking forward to chatting with you all today.
Hey, my name is Hari. I'm a senior development engineer, part of App Runner team. Looking forward for the show and showing some exciting demos.
Awesome. And my name is Mesh Singh. I'm a developer advocate with the Container Services team for AWS. Amongst the other developer advocates, which also work with me. We kind of do weird stuff sometimes with these containers on the couch. It's not going to be weird. It's going to be very interesting. And we're talking about App Runner. But before we go into the deep dive of what actually we released last week, I think, Nilesh, could you kind of give us a bit of a background on what App Runner is, why we use it, how would we use it?
Yeah, sure. Let me get into this right away. I'll be sharing my screen, and for our viewers, I'll be going through like 10,000 feet view of App Runner, what exactly App Runner is, what are the value proposition it brings for our customers. And so yeah, for today, we'll talk about why we built App Runner in the first place. What are the use cases that are supported by App Runner? We'll also go through a very high level view of all the features, the core features that are supported by App Runner. And then we will look into the recent launch, which is Secrets Manager and SSM parameter support for App Runner. So yeah, let's get started. So when we think of running web application or backend servers, there are a lot of different components that you as a customers need to manage. Be one of them being compute, which is AWS Fargate, orchestration of your containers, ECS. You have to think of load balancing, auto scaling, and then if you start with the source code, you also have to think of building your application code into a container image. So there are lots of moving pieces, lots of infrastructure components that customers have to manage. And customers told us that they want to offload all these operational overhead in running an application on AWS. And that's why we built App Runner. App Runner is a fully managed service which provides a highly abstracted experience of running web applications, APIs, and backend servers on AWS. So looking behind the scene, beneath the hood, what are the things that App Runner abstracts for you? Starting with CI/CD and build, we abstract everything. So with App Runner, you can start with your source code directly from GitHub repository and point it to App Runner, and App Runner will build it for you into a container image and then run it on App Runner. In terms of service infrastructure, you do not need to worry about load balancing, managing your Fargate instances, or even auto scaling your application. App Runner will manage that for you out of the box. And when it comes to networking, for every application, you need to configure your VPC, NAT gateway, internet gateway, manage your certificates for encryption and custom domain management. App Runner does everything out of the box for you. So all you have to do is bring your application and get it running on App Runner. Let's talk about the application characteristics that are supported on App Runner. So as of now,
Nilesh, I don't know if you're sharing your correct screen because we're still seeing the first slide. So
is it? I have moved on to the other slides. Let me stop sharing and restart it. Is it good now?
I'm still seeing the first
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
What
that's yeah, they were better now the characteristics. Yeah.
okay. I think when I'm going to slide view, probably it's not moving along.
Okay, so in slide view we don't see now.
What screen do you see? Is it characteristic?
The thumbnails on the left-hand side.
Sorry?
We see the one, not the presenter view, the other view. Sorry,
Okay.
the presenter view, not the viewer's audience view.
Okay. So am I at web application characteristics for App Runner?
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, talking about the web application characteristics of the applications that can run on App Runner, it's built for HTTP request and response based web application and APIs, which means that it serves multi-concurrent applications. So your application can be a long running application, and during its lifetime, it can serve multiple concurrent requests. Your App Runner services needs to be stateless. If you have a requirement around maintaining the state of your applications, we recommend storing those states or data externally through database or caches. App Runner currently does not support background processing. The reason being we provide a near scale to zero experience when your applications are not active. So we throttle down the CPU and compute for your workload to save costs for you. So these are the characteristics and limitations that App Runner currently has. Now, talking about the features, I'll be going through a high-level view of different features, and then we'll get into the secrets and configuration management. So talking about the deployment on App Runner provides...
Sorry, let me stop you one more time because I think we're still stuck on we're still on the characteristics.
Okay, so how about I go with this view?
Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, talking about the build and deployment modes, you start with source code repository, and either you can bring your source code directly to App Runner, point it to your GitHub repository, and App Runner will build it, deploy your application, and provide you a secure service URL that you can use to access your application. Or alternatively, you can also bring your ECR container image directly to App Runner, and App Runner will deploy it and provide you a service URL for your application.
So if I can ask you a question there,
Sure.
You're saying you can either give a GitHub repository, in other words, with all my application code that I put in the GitHub repo, and I just point App Runner and it adds that code, and based on every commit, it will build a new container and deploy that new container for me?
Yes, that's correct. In App Runner, you can also you have full control of your deployment policies. So you can use your existing CI/CD tools to do manual deployments whenever there are any code changes or commits. Or you can also configure App Runner to do automatic deployments for you, which means that whenever there is a change or commit in your GitHub repository, App Runner will automatically deploy the latest version of your code.
Awesome.
Yeah, and behind the scenes, App Runner also performs whenever there is an automatic deployment. App Runner will do a blue-green deployment under the hood, which essentially means that App Runner will perform all the health checks that are required to pass the service or as healthy. And if there are any failures, App Runner will automatically roll back to the previous version, which essentially means that you will see no downtime with your service. Your App Runner service is always up and available with the healthy version serving your customers. And as I mentioned, it also supports automatic deployment for both source code as well as ECR-based deployments. So whenever there is any change in your ECR container registry or your source code repository, App Runner will fetch those changes and build a new service for you. Now, talking about app networking in App Runner, networking, when we say networking, it comprises of both egress as well as ingress, which means outgoing network from your App Runner service and incoming network to your App Runner service. Last year, we launched VPC support as well as private services. And now App Runner covers all the different modes of networking. By default, you get an App Runner service which can be accessed over internet and which can send outgoing traffic to the internet. To configure your outgoing traffic, you can also, so for example, if you have a database, DynamoDB or RDS database that your App Runner service needs to connect to, you can do so securely by setting up a VPC connector in App Runner and communicating all the data connections inside your VPC. Similarly, if you have any requirements around making your App Runner app service or your application privately accessible inside your VPC, you can do so by creating VPC private interface endpoints. And you can use both these features in conjunction. So that fulfills the complete end-to-end networking capabilities for you. Now, the other fully managed and completely abstracted feature or capability that App Runner provides you is auto scaling. So in App Runner, the compute or your application copy is running on a compute, and that comprises of CPU and memory. You have different compute configurations that you can use. And for every application instance, you need to define concurrency, which essentially means that how many concurrent requests one application instance will handle for you. If there are more concurrent requests, App Runner will automatically scale your application to meet your traffic needs. Now, looking into the auto scaling features, as I said, App Runner scales on concurrent requests. And by default, it provides you with low latency, which means that if your application is not receiving traffic, it will throttle down the CPU, but it will still have the compute memory attached to your application instance. So essentially, you will not be paying for the CPU. You'll only pay for the minimum provision instance compute memory, and which results in low latency. Whenever your application gets any traffic, it will automatically scale to meet your traffic needs. For cost control, you can also specify what are the maximum number of instances that you want to scale up to. And as I said, it's completely scaled to zero, near scale to zero. And the reason we are doing this way is to make an opinionated decision for our customers to reduce the cold start and latencies involved with completely scaling to zero. Now, coming to pricing, App Runner has its own pricing. There are 5 dimensions. One, you pay for the CPU and memory. Second, you pay if you are using source code and you are building on App Runner, you pay a minimal amount for building, and it's charged on every minute. Automatic deployments. If you enable automatic deployments, as I said, with this feature enabled, whenever there are any changes in your ECR repository or source code repository, App Runner will detect those changes and deploy that application for you. And you pay $1 per month per service for that. And then the 5th dimension is data transfer, which is standard AWS data transfer fees that you pay when your application is interacting to the internet. Now, coming to our recent launch, we launched secrets and configuration management support, or in other words, we launched support for Secrets Manager, AWS Secrets Manager, and AWS Systems Manager parameter store. So let me talk about why this is important, why this is a critical feature for our customers. So as we know, every application needs access to some sort of sensitive information. It can be a database, password or connection parameters, API keys, and whatnot. And these sensitive information, following the best practices, developers prefer to externalize the management of these sensitive information. And the benefit that externalizing the management is that it improves your application code reusability, which essentially means that you do not have to hard code or directly pass the API in your application code itself. You are managing your sensitive information separate from your application so that in future you can reuse your application code for other purposes. It also, when you think of managing separately, you will also want to manage it separate from the service configuration, so that if your 10 different APIs are connecting to a same database, you don't want to manage configuration in 10 different App Runner services. You want to handle the secrets in one central place, which is Secrets Manager or Parameter Store, and you want to reference or retrieve those secrets data directly in your App Runner service. And overall, it improves the security posture of your applications running on App Runner. Basically, no one has got access to those secrets and sensitive information. Their specific team or the personnel managing those sensitive information has the directly access of these underlying services, which are Secrets Manager and Parameter Store. So yeah, that's the key pain point that we had for our customers when dealing with sensitive information. And this is the feature that we launched recently. I'll hand it over to Hari for walking us through the feature and showing how it works.
So while Hari brings up his screen, there was a question from the audience from YOGN48. How does the internal service discovery works? In other words, if I have multiple App Runner services talking to each other, how do they know where to go and how do they talk to each other?
Yeah, so App Runner supports custom domains. So by default, when you deploy an App Runner service, it provides you with a domain name, but you can also use your custom domains. So let's say I have got test1.example.com and test2.example.com. I can create those custom domains. App Runner will provide with you with all the key and value pairs of the certificate that you can then go ahead and add to your DNS servers. Once validated, everything will work. So the service discovery works through custom domain management.
Okay, yeah. Awesome. So Hari, over to you. What are you going to give? I mean, more wonderful knowledge you're going to share with us. What are we looking at?
Hey, thanks. Thank you, Nilesh, for the wonderful introduction. So we are going to go through 3 short demos. Hopefully, the first one is a simple use. We'll set up an App Runner service that is going to connect with an secret that is stored in the Secrets Manager and which is actually used by RDS to connect to it and get some data out of it. So this is a simple use case, I would say happy path. The second one is a failure scenario where you have integrated with the Secrets Manager and for some reason your creation failed. How can I go and understand what is actual failure, root cause it? And the third one is bit advanced use case where you can actually go and specify a particular JSON key that you want to fetch from Secrets Manager or the version label that you want to look at instead of fetching the whole JSON and doing the parsing on the coding side.
Cool.
Okay, so we'll start with the first part, which is a simple use case, I would say happy path. So this is the blog that we released along with the launch. So the blog actually has a step-by-step instruction around what is App Runner is, how can we integrate with Secrets Manager, Parameter Store, and high-level architecture, and then a code that is out there in the GitHub that you can actually play with and start running this service. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do it step by step. I have already gone ahead and built this infrastructure because it's going to take some time. I'll walk through the infrastructure, what we have built here, start creating the App Runner service, and then I'll also dive into the code to explain how we are reading the database credentials and not hard coding them or having to use any SDK to fetch that from using the code. So that said, I know the diagram is a bit blurry, but we have a simple App Runner service that is going to call a particular query that's in the Aurora that's running.
Can I just stop you and ask if you can make it a tiny bit bigger on the screen so that we can see it properly, perhaps? If that will help.
Sure. Is this any better, or I can?
One more, perhaps.
Okay.
Yeah,
now?
That's a lot better. Perfect.
Okay. Awesome. So we have an App Runner service which is running a hotels application that's going to interact with an Aurora that is running on a private subnet. So the key thing that we want to point out is just before this launch, you need to actually use an AWS SDK to fetch the secret and then connect to the database, or you may need to hard code the complete password, part of the environment variables, to actually use them. So going forward, you don't need to do that.
Never ever do. Please don't do that. Please don't hard code anything into your code, and specifically don't commit those things into a public repository or even a private repository. That's a very big no-no.
Exactly, right. So we just want to move away from that and probably help customers not doing that. So we have built this feature where you can actually reference the secrets, and we would go and fetch it and actually make it available in the environment variable, so you can actually directly use them in your code. So that said, I'm going to jump into the CloudFormation and explain few things and then walk through the code. So this is the GitHub repository. I'm sure the link is...
Yeah, one more perhaps, if you can. Yeah, perfect.
And the link is provided part of the blog. So you should be able to just clone this and play around with it. I'm going to talk through the code that's involved in it as well. So that said, now let's jump into, let me open it up. So the actual example has two portions to it. The first one is the infrastructure, where we go and build the VPC, the subnets, the Aurora database, integrate Aurora's password username to Secrets Manager, and then create a VPC connector. So we have gone ahead and built everything already for you, part of this CloudFormation template. And the template is also available part of the GitHub repo that I shared. So you can see it builds a bunch of AWS resources. So I'm going to quickly jump to a few of them, walk through what it is, and then jump into the creation of the service. So the key thing that you want to probably pay attention to is the outputs. So we do output the secret that was built part of this stack, and then the environment variable, the parameter that was also built part of the stack. So we'll be using
And
both.
when you say you output the secret, you output the path to the secret in Secrets,
yes,
not the actual value of the secret itself. Okay.
Exactly, right. So this is just the whole on where the secret is actually getting stored. This is not the secret at all.
Okay.
Same goes for parameter. We are not exposing the actual parameter. We are just showing that where the parameter is stored. So now let's quickly jump into the cluster. So this is the Aurora cluster. I'll give it a few minutes to load. Okay, so let me go back. You should see a demo cluster which was created part of this. And as you can see, if I scroll down, this is not publicly accessible. Yeah, it should be here. So this is not publicly accessible. So which means that I need to actually have a VPC connector created to access it. So my traffic would go through the VPC connector and hit this RDS endpoint. Another thing to point out here is we don't use the inbuilt capability of RDS to directly put in the username and password. Instead, we integrated with the Secrets Manager. So this provides a lot of benefits for you, because now, let's say for some reason your password is compromised and you want to rotate it, it's much seamless, and you can even have a schedule for your rotation. So we get a lot of benefits by doing that, so which is a best practice, and we have followed that here. So that said, now let's go ahead and start building the service. So just to save some time, I've already built them, but I'm going to show how to do it step by step, and then we'll come back to these services. Okay, this is going to be a source-based repository. As you know, I have already forked that public GitHub repo. So you can see here, you can use the fork option that you have here. So it will automatically go into my GitHub repository. So what I'm going to do here is I already have a GitHub connector. I'm going to just refer my local repository, which is App Runner Hotels app. And I'm going to make it automatic. So whenever I make a code change, I push it, App Runner will automatically detect that and go and rebuild that service for me. So now this is a node-based application. So I'm going to select as Node.js 16. And the build command here is npm install. And the start command in this case is npm start. So I'm using 8080 as port, so there are no changes to it. So the build command, as you know, helps App Runner to build that application. And then the start command will actually help me to start the container with that command. So that's it. Let's move on to the next one. Let's give a name. So App Runner demo v1. So this is a new section that we added part of this feature launch. If you want to get more insights around that, you can click on info. You should see a side panel loading with a lot more details around what are the types of environment variables we support. So we basically support 3 of them. I'm going to walk through one by one. So this panel should give you a lot of insights around what are the support we provide right now. And you can also directly click on this hyperlinks to jump to Secrets Manager or Parameter Store to have a quick look around, okay, what are we trying to fetch, or copy the ARNs that we need, so which may come in handy. Another key thing that I want to bring up here is some of the security best practices, right? So as you know, if you want to inject a secret or an environment variable, you need to provide an instance role. So when you provide an instance role, you need to provide the permission that is as refined as possible, that you fetch just the required things, not more than that. So as a best practice, we do provide a sample policy that you can actually click on copy and use it for building your IAM policy. So same goes
Very
for,
nice.
so this by default, you should tell that I just need get secret value and then decrypt if that secret is using a KMS to decrypt it. Similarly, for parameter store, we have the minimal permission that's required to fetch that. And you should also see an example. You can copy from here and use it. So I'll show you an IAM role that I built for this demo. But these things are like tools and tips that can make you familiar with this feature before actually using the feature.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so now let's talk about the 3 different types that we added now. So plain text, I think everyone would be familiar with this. You can just give a key and value pair. You can just provide it here and it would all work. The next 2 things which is of interest here is Secrets Manager and Parameter Store. So you can click on Secrets Manager and you can provide a name and then reference the ARN. That is actually the place where the secret is getting stored. So for the demo purpose, I'm going to use 2 names and I will walk through the code, how it is getting used. So it'll all come back together.
Perfect.
So I'm going to give a name. So this is the name in which the actual secret that is getting fetched will be injected. And this is an ARN where the secret is stored. So to give some background, this is the secrets. This is the entry in Secrets Manager, which actually stores the RDS credentials, which will include username, password, port, everything. So the code, as you can see here, will use that to connect to RDS instance without us specifying anything. So the next one,
and it's all encrypted without exposing these anywhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
So the next one is Parameter Store, where we are just going to fetch the hotel name that is stored in the SSM Parameter Store. So this can come in handy, especially when you want to expose some configurations that is common across your multiple microservices. You don't need to put them right now in the environment variables as plain text. You can just reference them. So that way, if you go and change the parameter store, it should all work. So all these values are actually available in the output. If you go here, you can see that output. So instead of copying it from here, I have it in my notepad. I'm just taking it from there. But ideally, you can just copy them and then directly use it there. So I'm going to just copy this and go back to App Runner and specify this. So that's pretty much it. So this program requires 2 environment variables, which we already supplied. And I'm not going to change anything here. The next thing I want to talk about is instance role. So if you want to fetch these secrets and parameters, App Runner should have permission to go and fetch it for you. So which is where the instance role comes in. So I'm going to use App Runner demo blog role. And let me open up the IAM console and show how it looks like. So that way, you just need to provide a minimal permission that's required to do this.
I assume it's going to have permissions to go get that specific secret in parameter store and that specific secret in Secrets Manager. Correct?
Exactly.
Awesome.
So you can see we just provided 2 get value, and I didn't use KMS for encryption. So I don't have to provide a KMS decrypt here. So I just specify the ARN where the secret is present, similarly the parameter. So it's as refined as possible, and I'm not giving any more permission that's required more than what it needs. So I have picked this role. Now I'm going to just say, okay, I want to enable X-ray. So that way I can see that, okay, is there a latency? Try to root cause some of the tracing things. It will help me on that. So this is optional. It's not mandatory. So I'm just turning it on. So it'll be better for me to understand the application.
And before you click next, didn't you say that this was a private database? So don't you have to create a connector?
That's a good point. I think you got it right. So we need to select the networking, and you need to select a private custom VPC. So just to be clear, this is a public and service, so anyone can access it. But we want to make sure the traffic that is going from the container goes through the customer VPC, so I can actually access the RDS that's there in the private subnet. So part of the CloudFormation, we have already gone ahead and created an VPC connector. So I'm just going to pick that VPC connector, and you'll see all the details regarding that VPC connector in here, and that's pretty much it. So this is what you need to provide. So the application will now have the required access and the route to connect to the RDS instance. That's a good catch. Thank you. Okay, so that said, I think we have everything here. You can also go ahead and review the integrations that we have provided here, part of the review screen, and that's pretty much it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on create and deploy. So as you know, it's going to take like 3 to 4 minutes to complete. So this is the right time for us to jump into the code to understand how all these things comes together.
Okay.
So I have a Cloud9 instance where I have actually done a Git clone of the App Runner hotel app that you see in the GitHub. So a few things which
I'm going to ask you to make it a tiny bit bigger, please, if you don't mind. Is that possible?
Let me try. Is it better?
Yeah, much better. Thanks.
Okay. So the first thing I want to point out here is the package.json. We have not included, or actually we have used SDK, but we have not used the Secrets Manager API or Parameter Store API to fetch anything from the downstream systems. So as a developer, you don't need to bring in those dependencies anymore. So it's all like you can just reference them and we'll bring it for you. So the key thing that I want to point out here is rds.json. Here is where the magic is, where we are using the MySQL object that's in Node.js to create a connection. And as you can see here, I am just using the secrets object to reference the host, password, and username. So now if I just trace back what this secrets object is, it is coming from config, which is nothing but a config.json file. So the moment I get into this, you can see the secret is actually coming from environment variables, my secret. So I'm not actually fetching it from anywhere. And as you know, my secret is actually referencing an secret, not bringing it the actual value. So this is how now this application is going to connect and use this integration to fetch the secret, username, and the host parameters to connect to RDS and run a query. So you would see that it will print connecting to so-and-so, and it will connect to the database, and then it will just run a simple query and then print the solution here. So this is how the code is written. So now I'm going to go back. So it's going to take a bit more time for it to deploy, but I already have.
Once refreshing, was the question which came into from the chat was, can you use the EFS with App Runner?
Nilesh, you want to go ahead?
And for those who don't know what EFS is, Elastic File System, which is essentially a network share, which is available as a service within AWS. So, Nilesh.
Yeah, sure. So currently, App Runner does not support any file system mounting on container instances, but please feel free to add upvote our GitHub roadmap, and we'll look into this.
Okay, thank you. And there was one more question about the MySQL. Is it a single MySQL pool shared across instances? Does it work like an RDS proxy? I think that would depend on the way you configure it. I assume you can provision one for every single service or that you deploy. You can use the same database and connect multiple services into the same VPC if you would like. So it depends on how you would like to configure it. There are a number of different options available to you.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, I think this one is a very simple bare-bone example, I would say, but you can go ahead and create as much complex as you want. I think in this case, the connections are maintained on the instance level, But if you want to share them, that's still possible using some sort of a caching technique. So yeah, we can do that. Okay, it is already performing health check. So we'll give a few more seconds, but I think we don't have to wait for this. We have a service that's already running. So this is the service which is created using the exact same configuration. As you can see here, if I go to configuration, now you have this brand new screen where you can look at all the parameters and secrets that we have referenced. It's exactly the same. So if I hit on this default domain, you should now see the app up and running.
App Runner Hotel. Awesome. It's the first time I'm seeing this. Cool.
So the interesting part here is to click on parameters. So this is just printing all the environment variables that you have injected part of your configuration. So if you remember, we injected hotel name and we didn't give any value. It has already fetched it for you, which is AWS App Runner Hotel. And in the code, you would have already seen we are fetching username, port, and cluster. So these are the values are actually that's stored in those internal variables inside the secrets manager. And for obvious reason, we are not printing the password here. It's some random password, but it shows that now you can actually connect and you are able to connect to database and actually get the actual values. So
Cool.
This is an end-to-end demo where we have not used any SDK or injected any hard-coded credentials, but we are able to enhance the security posture of our applications. Okay, I want to show one more thing. I think it should be up in a few seconds. Yep. So the key item that I want to show here that the whole thing is working is the application log. If you go to the demo, as you can see here, we are printing few lines connecting to RDS. So I want to actually show that these are actually printed and you can see the actual values outputted. If I go to application logs, you can see the solution is 2 connecting to so-and-so. So this kind of proves that the whole thing is working and we are able to fetch the values and run a query successfully and get back a response.
And all these logs, of course, are stored in CloudWatch with retention policies, and you can aggregate, perform alarms on them, whatever you would like a regular CloudWatch log. Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the service is up and running. If I click on it, you should get the same response that we got before.
Nice. So I have a question. I know the answer to this one, but I would like to give you the opportunity. What is the difference between, we have two options, storing a secret, none of them are less secure than the other, one in parameter store and one in Secrets Manager. When would you choose which one is better, or what would be the use cases for both? Or why would you choose one over the other?
Yeah, I would answer this more like as a developer. So when the name secrets is kind of to store all sensitive data, I can use KMS to encrypt it. Secret Manager also provides a concept of rotations. So any secret that you have is not secure if you don't rotate it regularly, right? So you can actually have an option to rotate it automatically, and it also has an option to connect with RDS. So in my mind, I would always think secret means sensitive data, right? I always store any sort of sensitive data in the Secrets Manager. Parameter store, I kind of feel like configurations. So if I want to store a global timeout value that will be used across multiple applications, or probably some sort of a name or some reference that I want to manage across applications, then I would use parameter. And again, it's just depending upon your use case or the one which you're familiar with. One and other is not, I'm not saying that one is secure than other. It just depends upon how you want to go about with.
Perfect. And when you say that, you mentioned that, for example, for Secrets Manager, they rotate the secrets. Is that correct? You can rotate secrets on a regular basis?
Yes.
So how would that work with App Runner? In other words, if I rotated a secret, how would App Runner know, or my service in App Runner, know that the secret is being changed so that the connection string is no longer valid?
Yeah. So right now we don't support automatic refresh when a secret gets rotated. So that is something that we are looking into roadmap as well in future. But right now we don't support it. But we are planning to publish a blog, more like a best practice, that if you have a scenario like this, how will you go about and do an automatic deployment? So that way it's not a manual job. So that's the
Nice.
answer for it. Okay, I have two short demos which will be pretty quick. So let's say now you have gone ahead and built another App Runner service and you found it in create failed, and you want to understand what really went wrong, especially related to Secrets Manager and Parameter Store. There's a few things that can go wrong. You would have referenced a secret that didn't exist in your account. So maybe there's a spelling mistake or a typo in it, or you have referenced an IAM role that doesn't have the required permission to fetch that secret. So in that case, this is a demo where that is what we did. So we have a secret. If you go all the way to the bottom, I've used the same secret that we saw in the CloudFormation. So the secret, I know for sure this exists, but the role that I used for this example, if I scroll here, App Runner demo, no permission, right? So if I just try to go here and find that role, you should see there is no permission at all whatsoever. So which means this role doesn't have the required permission to fetch that secret for the customer. So in that case, if I go back to the service and if I go to the logs, you should see like a very clear indication of, this is the one, right? Yeah, you should see a very clear indication of the App Runner service creation failed, and here is why it failed, right? If you look into this, it says failed to fetch secret, so and so. Sorry, it's just moving around. Failed to fetch the secret, so and so from Secrets Manager because it's access denied, and the role is not having the required access. And you should see a 400 error. So this will help customers to root cause when something goes wrong, rather than guessing it. Okay, this is what might have gone wrong. Rather, we actually print exactly what went wrong. So now it's just a matter of time. You go ahead, update the role and recreate a service, and it would work as expected. This next thing is, if you have a secret or parameter that doesn't exist in your account, then we throw a 403 error, which is like, okay, it doesn't exist, it's an invalid request. So you are pretty much covered on both sides, where you may run into issues, and it's much easier to look into this log to understand what went wrong and root cause it.
Perfect. Will help with the troubleshooting for sure.
Yeah. And I have one more demo. It's again a short demo. It's an advanced use case where now I have something in my Secrets Manager, and I don't want to fetch the whole thing, right? So when I say whole thing, in case of our demo, the RDS actually stores a big JSON that contains username, password, host, and everything. But you don't want to actually do JSON parsing in your program, right? I want just the keys. I want just username. I want just password, or I want a particular version of the secret. So we do support those advanced use cases. So that way, whatsoever, you don't even need to use a JSON object in your code unless until it's required. So the demo of it would be here. So let me show the configuration first. So this is the configuration. Few things I'm going to walk through here is between parameters and secret. For parameter, if the parameter exists in the same region of the App Runner service, you don't need to provide an on. You just need to provide the name of the parameter. So which is much handy than actually typing a full-fledged on. If the parameter exists in a different region, then you need to provide a complete on. But if it is in the same region, you don't have to. You just need to provide the name. There are two other things which I want to talk about, which is like fetching a secret based on a version or based on a JSON key. So in this case, we are fetching the secret based on a version. So there's a particular format we support, and there's enough documentations around this here. And I will also drop some links in our channel once it is done, where you can actually go and look into this format and actually get the required ways to fetch those individual JSONs or versions. So if you look at this example, the username, I'm fetching the entire secret, and in that secret, I just want username JSON key. So this way, what you're saying is, okay, I don't want the whole JSON, I just want the key inside that JSON. Same goes for password, and even inside that key, let's say you're done some rotations, right? I just want
Okay.
the current value, or I want a previous value. So the AWS support, I mean, Secrets Manager supports AWS current and previous. So you can actually play around with those two keywords to fetch the version that you want. So these are again advanced configurations. Some people may use or may not use, but those things are possible now with this integration. So you don't have to write code to parse those things inside your program. So that said, I will also show a quick demo of it. Let me expand it. So if you look at this, in this case, the username, where I just said, okay, get me the username key inside the whole JSON. So since this is a dummy username password, I can actually show what is there in the Secrets Manager. But this is a JSON that's stored in Secrets Manager, and we are asking that, okay, give me just the username. Similarly here, give me just the password instead of giving the whole JSON. And similarly, if you look at the current, we are saying, okay, give us just the AWS current rather than previous or whatever it's requested. So I'm going to quickly jump to the Secrets Manager screen, and I will show this. That way it's more clear. So this is the demo password that we created for this demo, of course. If I reveal the secret, again, it's just a random one. It's a JSON, right? So we are actually having a JSON here. And instead of just asking us, say, okay, give me the whole JSON, I'm saying, okay, give me the username, give me the password. So that is exactly how it is done.
Awesome. So I had one question. You said that you can use parameter store in different regions. It's the same with Secrets Manager. For example, can I pull a secret from another region?
Yes. So parameter. So Secrets Manager supports cross region and cross account, but parameter store is just cross region because parameter store doesn't support cross account. So whatever the capabilities of both the services, you will be able to use them in App Runner.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. There were a couple of questions which came from chat, and I'm going to put them on the screen. With the first one was from Rudik's World. And I see App Runner as a serverless solution. I'm not sure how it differs from Fargate. He doesn't know much about both the services, but there's always more room to learn, of course. What is the difference between App Runner and other container services that we have? For example, Fargate, ECS, EKS. If you can give us a bit of an overview or your opinion on that.
Yeah, sure. So I can take that. So as you know, App Runner is built on top of Fargate. So behind the scenes, when we say App Runner is running your application instance, essentially it's running Fargate tasks. But the value that App Runner brings to you is in form of abstraction and managed solution that it provides. So with App Runner, you don't have to directly manage your Fargate instances. You don't have to keep track of OS patching, runtime management, auto scaling, and all those things. So when you use ECS and Fargate as solution to run your application, you have to take care of load balancing. You have to take care of encryption, auto scaling, and there are so many different components that I presented in one of the slides. All these things are abstracted by App Runner and managed for you, so that you don't have to go down the path of managing infrastructure. All you can do is just develop your application, bring it to App Runner, and it will run and scale for you.
It's one of my favorite services because I think it is the easiest way to deploy a container in the cloud. Hands down, you don't have to worry about, as you say, all the underlying piping, plumbing, and everything underneath. It's all taken care of for you. All you do is you provide a container into and deploy it.
Yeah, I think one key item along with that is CI/CD, which is a huge benefit.
Correct. Is it possible to put in a sidecar of some sort? For example, custom log forwarding or security agents or things like that?
No, currently App Runner does not support sidecars, but we have use cases where customers use Lambda functions to stream those logs and matrices to their third party, let's say Datadog, New Relic, or any third party of their choice for aggregating and analyzing their logs and metrics. But that's something that we are considering. That's also on our GitHub roadmap. If you have specific use case, please do let us know through our public roadmap. And Mahesh, it will be great to share our public roadmap.
Of course, for sure. I'm going to do that right now. The next question which came up was for, where was the question I was looking for? Can App Runner listen to SQS events?
I can take that, Nilesh. Yeah. Actually,
Here's
App
the link to
Runner.
the roadmap on the screen.
Yeah, so App Runner right now doesn't do that, but there is a workaround which you can do. So you can use EventBridge, which allows this integration possible, and just directly call the endpoint that we want for App Runner. Since App Runner is request-based scaling, so it should work exactly how you would do an integration with SQS. So as Nilesh mentioned, there is a roadmap item, but if you are interested, we are allowed to talk more on that as well.
And again, this is the roadmap here up on the screen. If you want to submit an issue, see how we're doing with our development and see what's on the roadmap, what we're actually working on. There was another question which came up. Where do I find information about the storage and persistency of those containers? And I'm going to let you answer that, but the idea, of course, is you don't, because, Nilesh.
So App Runner, as I said, it's for stateless applications. So if you have to manage storage or if you have to manage persistency, it needs to be through database, Elastic Cache, and all those other services which AWS provides with rich capabilities. So we are relying on these underlying AWS services to deliver those capabilities for customers. As far as native integration in App Runner for these features are concerned, we are actively working on our roadmap, and we are active on our GitHub public roadmap as well. So as I said earlier, at the risk of repeating myself, please do let us know your feedback, your asks. We are always there on our public GitHub roadmap.
Perfect. We're coming to a close, more or less to the end of an hour. Is there anything that you would like to share, how people can find you, contact you, either through social media or whatever else you would like to share? Either of you, my gentlemen?
Yeah, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn. Let me share my LinkedIn and Twitter profiles. You can also reach out directly to me if you have any questions to my Amazon email. I'm happy to chat with you about any questions or use cases that you may have.
Yep, same here. I want to touch upon one question that came in. I just glanced on it. I think one of the customers is having an issue for not seeing an instance role. So you just need to make sure the trust policy is correct. And I can share the link to you, and we can send it in the group chat.
Perfect. Awesome. And from my perspective, my name is Mesh SK on Twitter. DMs are open. Feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to hear your feedback about the session and other sessions you would like to also see. And before we go, there was one last question which came in. Is GitLab and App Runner any support at the moment, or is it only GitHub?
Yeah, we are working actively on that. So you can expect that integration coming in 2023.
Awesome. Hari and Nilesh, thank you very, very much for your time. It was awesome having you here. Hope to see you on a future show. Looking forward to all the things that App Runner is going to be delivering for us in the next year and the future years to come. Thank you very much for your time. And thank you, everybody, for being so active on the chat and asking all the questions. It was very, very interesting, very interactive. Thank you very much. It was just as if you were here with us. And don't forget two things. Number one, we have a YouTube channel for Containers on the Couch. Hit the subscribe button. Tomorrow, we have another episode as well on the new releases for ECS. You're welcome to join us. Same time, same place on Twitch. See you guys tomorrow.
Thank you all. Thanks, Mahesh, for us.
Bye.